It's my great pleasure to invite Karol Buczakowski from Narodowe Siły Zbrojne w Chicago.
Witam wszystkich i dziękuję bardzo za tak liczne przybycie wszystkich Państwa do Waszyngtonu, DC, do ośrodka, który nie jest znany ze swojej licznej Polonii, ale jak widać i ośrodek, który nie jest znany ze swojej licznej Polonii, można zrobić polskim ośrodkiem. My name is Karol Buczakowski. I'm the representative of the Polonia from Chicago. Forgive me for reading my speech, but outside of everything that everybody has said, I wanted to take a very technical and legal route to speak to both Mr. President Trump and the congressman to really give second thought to the law that they signed or that they voted through and Mr. President signed, because in my opinion, this law should have never been put forth. If anybody, any of the congressmen would have really read this law and understood how it violates the U.S. Constitution and what sort of dangerous precedent it could stand in the U.S. legal system, they would not make the mistake of voting this law through. 2 days ago, May 9th, marks a year from when the heinous and unconstitutional Act S-447 got signed into law by President Donald Trump. Under this law, the State Department has 6 more months to compile reports detailing how other governments are dealing with compensation for Holocaust-era assets, including airless property. There are many aspects of this law that set off alarm bells, but I will focus on the 2 main ones. The first is that the law is unconstitutional, and the second is that it sets an extremely dangerous precedent for the United States and its legal system. Act S-447 states that airless property, which is property left behind with no heirs, should be compensated by the countries where such property resides, but it is not clear at all to whom this compensation should be granted. Compensation of airless property to an individual, group, or organization that does not have any legal basis for its ownership goes against the basic common law traditions we have lived under in the Western world for centuries. For centuries, airless property has been transferred over and claimed by the state in which the property resides in. It is no different in the United States today. This country's airless property laws and historic Supreme Court cases and decisions clearly state that tangible airless property, if unclaimed by someone with legal rights to this property, belongs to the state. In fiscal year 2015 alone, the United States collected and claimed $7.8 billion in airless and unclaimed property, according to the National Association of Unclaimed Property Administrators. There have been several Supreme Court decisions that deal with intangible airless or unclaimed property, such as money orders, bonds, or stocks, but they also shine a very decisive and bright light on the legal basis for cases of tangible airless property, such as houses, buildings, businesses, or contents of a safety deposit box. The first example in a Supreme Court decision is Texas versus New Jersey, 380 U.S. 518 from 1965, in which we can read that, quote, "While common law had for years recognized that tangible property, real or personal, could only be claimed by the state in which the property has located, there had never been set of rules for the achievement of intangible personal property such as debt." If we juxtapose the ruling of the Supreme Court in this case, it is clear that Act S-447 is eagerly attempting to claim airless property from other governments, such as the government of Poland. The tangible property left airlessly in Poland after the horrors of World War II belonged to the state of Poland, under both the US and Polish law, unless a legal heir of an individual property goes through the judicial process in Poland and gains ownership. The other notable Supreme Court case is Standard Oil versus New Jersey, 341 U.S. 428 from 1951. The decision in the case states that, quote, "It is clear that a state, subject to constitutional limitations, may use its legislative power to dispose of property within its reach belonging to unknown persons. Such property thus escapes seizure by would-be possessors and is used for the general good, rather than the chance of enrichment of particular individuals or organizations, end quote. To put in layman's terms, a government can use the value it has collected in heirless property for the general good of the state, such as but not limited to infrastructure, education, health services, etc. But it is absolutely illegal for this money to go to individuals or any organizations for their enrichment. To tie this back to Act S447, the value of the heirless property claimed by the Polish government after World War II cannot be distributed to any individual Holocaust survivor or any Jewish organizations, as this act directs to do, if they do not have any legal ownership claims to the property. Act S447 also sets a very dangerous precedent for the United States and its legal system. Allow me to read an introduction part of this act. Quote, no later than 18 months after the date of the enactment of this act, the Secretary of State shall submit a report to the appropriate congressional committees that assess and describe the nature and extent of national laws and enforceable policies of covered countries regarding the identification and return of restitution for wrongfully seized and transferred Holocaust-era assets, end quote. What if we change one phrase of this act, and instead of including Holocaust-era assets, we replace it with Native American genocide-era assets? How many of our homes, businesses, and entire cities reside on properties that once belonged to the indigenous people of North America? If Act S447 is executed and the U.S. State Department forces other states, with Poland among them, to return Holocaust-era heirless property to the U.S. government, Jewish private organizations, or individual Holocaust survivors, does this leave the door open for today's Native American communities to have a legal precedent to claim lands and properties once confiscated from their ancestors? The result of such dramatic property ownership change could be catastrophic for the United States. Act S447 also carries a geopolitical aspect to it. Poland and the United States have been great partners in NATO, and both countries deem the other as one of its strongest and most strategic allies. If Act S447 is executed, Poland will be forced to surrender around $300 billion in compensation, which is 3 times the yearly budget of the state. This will cause a complete economic and geopolitical destabilization of Poland itself, but also the region, giving NATO's opponents, such as Russia, an opportunity to take advantage of this destabilization. The Polish and Jewish people stand together as victims of the atrocities committed by Nazi Germany, and we should support each other in our fight for restitution and compensation from the real perpetrators of the horrific acts of the 20th century, which is Germany, without a doubt. Based on the unconstitutional nature and the dangers such as the precedent brings into the U.S. legal system, we strongly request the United States Congress and President Trump to completely repeal Act S447 from the United States legal system. Lastly, I have a few final words I'd like to address to the Polish government. With the U.S. government getting closer and closer to a military conflict with Iran and seeking military backing from its allies, it seems the Polish government is ready to aid its partner in a similar fashion as it did in 2001 during the War on Terror campaign. With this being the case, we urge the Polish government to unequivocally request the United States that if the Polish military is to give any support for the U.S. campaign in Iran, it requires Act S447 to be completely and comprehensively repealed from the United States law. Thank you.
Thank you.